My next question is about associative remote viewing, and it's called ARV. And ARV is very interesting because many very good remote viewers have hard time getting good statistics in associative remote viewing. And I've thought a lot about this, and I've been wondering, I was involved in one ARV project, and I experienced that it was also more difficult, but I'm just wondering perhaps the why the project can interfere, why one want to have ARV project somehow. Maybe the system constraints it, but I don't know. I want to hear your take on it. But I just want to explain for the audience who doesn't know what ARV, what it is. That is, for example, if you have a question, who will win the election? Will it be Donald Trump or Kamala Harris? Then the tasker has a picture of, let's say, an island. And if Donald Trump will win the election, the viewer will get an island, picture of an island. If Kamala Harris will win the election, the viewer will view a building in New York. And then the viewers, let's say 10 viewers, get the query number like 7104, and they start to access and describe. So what often happens is that the viewers get both pictures mixed in one or the wrong one. And many have great statistics for a while, then it drops a whole lot in ARV projects. And there are many experienced viewers that's been doing this for 20 or 30 years that have difficulty with ARV, and I just want to hear your thoughts about it. And one thing that I also thought about is many ARV projects are in betting and financial stuff. I was wondering, like, is that the thing that perhaps makes it more difficult? So, yeah.
I've seen where people have done this and then pick their symbols, like you said, of a building or an island. They'll pick those after the remote viewers are done remote viewing. So they'll actually do a random pick later on and say, okay, this random pick says islands is going to be this and buildings are going to be that, but they don't even do that ahead of time. They do that afterwards.
Viewing the probable future instead, yeah.
Mm-hmm. What's going on there? If you have, the system, the query system is a very intelligent query system. It doesn't have to just be, show me the picture that's associated with 16729. That's pretty straightforward. But if you have an attitude, if you have feelings about something, that can also query. You can get information without intending to, just because your mind has a question in it, will float through your mind and answers pop out. And you didn't try to remote view. You gather the information as your mind seeks answers to things. This is after you've been doing it a while. I guess probably not so much for beginners, but for other people. But this associative stuff isn't really for beginners either. That's not a beginner kind of thing. That's a thing that, more seasoned remote viewers do. So if you set up conditions, you can set up a condition, and you mentioned the condition that says, all right, condition A, you'll see an island. Condition B, you'll see a building, and you set that up. And then you have people remote viewing and see what you get, say, what is it? Open your mind and see what comes. And your question that you have in your mind, I think, is something like, who's going to win the election? I think this is how it works, right? Your question in your mind is, who's going to win the election? And then you open your mind and see what happens, whether you get one of the two.
The viewer doesn't know anything, they're blind to it. They only know that, well, it's ARV project. So they know there are two pictures. that represents yes or no, kind of. But the only thing they know is the query. It's the number. They don't know the intent behind.
They don't know what
question is. No, they don't.
They don't know what the question is,
No.
and they don't know what the pictures are.
No.
Yeah. Okay. So it's all blind.
Yeah. But the tasker could perhaps influence. I don't know. Maybe the tasker has opinion about the election and it could interfere. I don't know. Just speculating.
Well, there's several things that might be at effect here. Then, okay, so they set this up. The remote viewers don't know the two pictures. They also don't know what the task is. You're only going to get that to succeed when somebody has created the logic for it to make sense. Somebody has to create the situation that says, all right, I'm going to have a bunch of remote viewers come in and they won't know anything, but this is the question: who wins the election? These are the two targets, and here's the association with each one. They have to create that situation within consciousness. So they create this logical system. Okay, and they define all the terms and they'll have a logical system.
Yeah.
Now, that has to happen first, because if that doesn't happen, then none of this works. So you you create the logical system. Then you have an intention that I'm going to get 10 remote viewers, or the people that are in the room are going to remote view, and I want them to get, one of these pictures. Basically, you're talking to the system. Give them one of these pictures according to who's most likely to win the election, because the future is not a done deal. It's not who is going to, you can't do that, but who is most likely to win the election at this time. Okay, which might change. But anyway, you do that, and the system may play with you and say, okay, I'll do that. I'll play the game with you. And it may give them pictures and do that. And then it seems to work really well. The system may say, nah, don't want to play. This is not interesting to me, and I don't want to play the game, and it doesn't work. You're setting up a game with the larger consciousness system. It may or may not play with you. You see,
yeah, I suspected that.
Yeah, I set this up all the time for individuals. I will, work with, let's say, a lady who came out of coastal Western Africa. She's got some people who are giving her trouble, because in Africa, there are those people that use their minds to extort money.
Voodoo.
And favors and other things. There's a lot of that going on. So this lady is in the US, and she's a professor of biochemistry or something. She's making a pretty good salary. So she has people extorting her to send them money. Or if you don't send me money, then I will make sure that you're not fertile and you won't be able to have children, or I will see that your children get ill, or I will make your mother prone to having accidents or fall over. So, and they know that this is possible. Mind, with its intent, can modify future probability, and these people work at this, and they get fairly good at it, and they get sometimes a bunch of them, 4, 5, 6 of them together, who work together to do this. So in that kind of situation, I talk with her. I usually fix things for her. I straighten that out. I get rid of that influence. But then it has a tendency to come back. So I'll tell her, wherever you are, let's say this lady travels a lot. She travels all around the world. So I say, wherever you are, when you have a problem and you feel that you're under some sort of an attack of some sort, just call my name out and I'll come and I'll help you out. So you don't have to call me on the phone or anything like that. It might be the middle of the night for me or something else, but I will come. And it always works. So I set up the conditional in consciousness. If she calls, or if she says this magic word, that we've agreed on, if she does this thing, it's a trigger. That trigger will trigger my consciousness to respond and help her out. And I don't have to have an awareness of it. Me, this avatar doesn't have to be aware. This consciousness working this avatar may not be in the loop, but my consciousness is. Your consciousness is more than just what you're aware of. It's a bigger thing than just what you're aware of. So that works fine. So the system will work with you by setting up logical conditions and then let that logic trigger whenever it does, and then having things happen. So you can do that with a larger conscious system, but the system has to want to work with you. If you're a person that's growing up serious about getting rid of your fear, trying hard and whatever, the system tends to work with you. If you're just playing games and think this is fun and you like to amaze everybody about how this crazy stuff works, the system may or may not work with you. Or it may work with you once and then say, that's enough. It's not serious enough for me to bother with it. So it depends. Yeah. You're asking to set up a logical set of conditions and then for the system to make it work. Well, it will sometimes if the system wants to work with you. And if the system, because what you're doing is fundamental and good, is going to help people, then the system will work with you probably consistently and work with you every time. If it's just fun and you're just seeing whether it works or not, or your people aren't really all that serious in the bigger picture about getting rid of their fear or growing up or anything, then the system may work with you once or twice or whatever, just to show you it's possible, and then it may not. It just depends on how it feels about the quality of what you're doing and what the effect will have on the people. If the people who are there are people who will dream up some way to take advantage of people by using this skill, well, the system won't work with you. If you've got all the people there are serious about growing up and would never use the skill to take advantage of people, then the system's more willing to work with you. So it has to do with lots of variables, but that's something that you don't do just by yourself. It's not just you querying data from the database. You're setting up logical sets of conditions. And you're asking the system to make it work for you. And it sometimes will, sometimes won't. Now, you have your own intentions, and everybody that's involved in this has real strong intentions for it to work. Then that produces a little collective consciousness of the bunch of you involved in it. And that collective consciousness can work sort of like the LCS in that sense. It can raise and lower the probabilities to make it work, but it's not going to be nearly as good as if you get the LCS involved in it. You can make a collective consciousness. Anytime you get a bunch of people together doing something, you create a collective consciousness of that bunch of people. And that collective consciousness can modify future probability. So if you have 100 people doing this and they're all really serious and focused, you'll have a pretty strong collective consciousness. There are 10 or 20 of you doing it, and you're just having a good time, it'll be a pretty weak collective consciousness. So the collective consciousness can modify probability, but it's not as strong as if the LCS agrees, because you're trying to help somebody or do something good. So you're trying to make money at Las Vegas by determining who's going to win in some athletic contest by doing things like this. And at the same time, you're teaching people how to remote view, or there's some positive thing to it. Then the system will probably work with you. Okay. It doesn't mind if you cheat a little bit at Las Vegas. It's not a big problem, but it's not going to suddenly make your boss give you a promotion or things like that. That's not a good idea. So,
yeah, because that's interferes with our purpose here in this virtual reality. So yeah, I can definitely see that. But when we're in this topic now, so I'm gonna ask a question I have later on, but it is regarding this, and I'm curious about where the line can go between where you use your remote viewing to invest. Of course, people needs to earn money, and when you get good at remote viewing, I can understand that why some viewers want to explore economics and financial stuff. But I always had in mind, because I'm so familiar with your theory, that I think is very logical and explain all of this, that it's limiting perhaps to get very good at using size stuff to get a lot of money, because like that's not the purpose. But still I can see that there could be a good reason to get food on the table. But so I know of one particular viewer that's had a lot of success with diagrams and day trading, and I got curious. I was like, why is he so good at this? Because many others has problems with this, and I could see the logic with why the system wouldn't work with this. But he seems to have developed a good method or tool that works for him pretty often. So I'm just wondering where the line can go, where the system kind of like, come on now, children, stop it, or it's like, okay, you can play around with this. If you can comment on that.
Depends on whether this person who is successful at using this system and it is making him money, depends on that person. If what that person is doing is in general lowering entropy for himself and for others, then the system will probably support it. If what that person is doing is raising entropy for himself and others, then the system won't support it. So it's usually that sort of thing. So if that person's really greedy and they want more and more and more, and then because they have a lot of money, they push people around and become arrogant and that sort of thing, then the system's not going to support it. That's high entropy. But if that person says, okay, I have enough now, I can make the mortgage payment and I can do this, I'll just let it go for a while and whatever. And, they are more responsible. And maybe the fact that they can do it makes other people more interested in the subject. Yeah. It helps other people get enthused about learning and growing. So if it's got a positive side to it, then the system will support it. If it's got a negative side to it, then it won't. So it depends on the individual and who they are and how they connect and what people they influence, and kind of the whole thing gets evaluated. Those things that are actually helpful, in the end, they're lowering entropy, then the system supports it. So you can do that. But somebody that's going to do that because they're greedy and want to get super wealthy, it probably won't support that, because that's going to turn out to be high entropy. If they are sharing it, then they are a source of inspiration to other people to get interested in remote viewing, which opens their minds and helps them grow up, then the system will support that, particularly if they're not abusing it, they're just using it. So it's that sort of thing. So if a person changes and goes from using it and being helpful and then using it not being helpful, the system will stop. So just because it's working with you now doesn't mean it's going to work with you forever. It's working with you because what you're doing is helpful. So I've generally found that out. So I know other people who gamble on sports, and they gamble at Las Vegas, and they do other things like that using paranormal to help them. And I know some of them who win consistently. Mm-hmm. And that's basically their income stream. That's what they do. They don't have another job besides that. And they do it, and they're successful at it, but all of them give back. They teach remote viewing, or they give lectures or talks about this to people. They open minds. They do things. And the sum total, what they contribute is more positive than negative. They're not greedy. They don't take any more than what they just need to get by, and they don't live to a high style. They live very frugally. But that's how they pay their bills, and been doing it for years, that sort of thing. So it's depends on who they are, what they're doing, what they're accomplishing. If they just sat in their houses and didn't interact with anybody, it'd probably dry up and go away, because that's not helpful. But if they're out giving talks and encouraging other people to open their minds and get involved, then that's a very positive thing, and it may continue to work for them. So it depends on the person, their motivation, their intent, and the system tends to support what works toward lowering entropy for the individuals and for the system. We have to keep remembering our consciousness system is not a machine. It's a piece of consciousness. It thinks, it understands, it's conscious, it's aware. It's not just this big computer sitting there that just chugs and it's impersonal and doesn't really give a damn about anything. It just keeps chugging out answers or something. It's not like that. It's a big consciousness. It has awareness. So you have to count that in, that the system that you're working within is aware and can change the way things work whenever it wants to. It can put things into your data stream or not, depending on what it's trying to do. So you may wake up one morning and find an alien standing at your bottom of your bed. And that may be for no more reason than just to wake you up to the fact that reality isn't just this simple material thing and turn you into a seeker. Now you're going out in the internet and you're Googling aliens standing at your bed, and you're finding out that other people had the same experience. Well, that's just a wake-up call. It's a little cold water splashed in your face to make you get out of your rut, open your mind a little bit and see what's going on. Start looking for bigger pictures. The system does all kinds of things to help people grow. And since it's a virtual reality, it's truthfully simple to make anything happen that it wants to happen. We get data streams, we interpret them. If there's an alien in your data stream, then that's what you see. That's your reality. It's that sort of thing. We tend to forget that. We think that our reality is just some big machine. It's impersonal, doesn't, has no influence. So everything has a button-down reason, but not necessarily. You have to understand that there's an awareness in charge, and that awareness has a purpose, and that's lowering entropy. And if you get too much on the wrong side of that purpose, it's not going to reach in, and it's not God playing with its pet people. It's not going to reach in and do that, but it can tweak in the margins here and there as long as it doesn't show, as long as it's invisible and nobody can really point to its interference. It can interfere as much as it likes without anyone noticing. Then it will do that, but it tries to do it without ever overrunning your free will. It always lets you have free will. So it's not going to force you to ever make any kind of a choice. You have to make all your own choices. But it can slant the playing field a little bit to make things a little harder or a little easier. Things that require its participation, like this logic game that you set up for it, well, it can participate or not participate. It can participate in a big way or just a little bit, just enough to open some minds, but not enough to cause any trouble, depending on what it is you're doing.
Just to share a bit about that, I think I have a game with a larger consciousness system with a hare showing up, the animal, a hare. Every time I need to open my mind more and not being stubborn, kind of, I see a hare. It's humorous because if I'm in an argument with my wife or something like that, we fight over something, then I go out for a walk, and there's a hare running past me. And the last time was so funny. We were at a hotel, spa hotel, and we're talking, and we got into an argument, and I was like, my ego was a little bit big. I thought I knew more than her about the subject, and the bush was rattling. And I thought, no, it's not a hare, right? And it popped up. I was like, you're kidding. Yeah, I should remind myself to keep on working with my ego.
Absolutely. Every time you you think you know more, and you're going to teach the other person what they need to be thinking. You can't do that. You don't force your knowledge or what you think
Yeah.
on other people. They
Yeah.
have to come to it on their own.
Yeah.
You can't do much to affect another person's attitude or way of thinking directly. That all has to happen indirectly. They have to learn on their own. So yeah, I'm sure that's just the thing you've got. So
Yeah.
that hair is your own personal symbol for the system telling you to your fear is showing, your ego is showing. Reconsider, go back, apologize to your wife.
Yeah.
Yeah, right. That's good.
Yeah.
It's good that you've done that, because the system's willing to work with you. If you are what I call a person of interest, a legal term, you're a person of interest to the system, that means you're trying to grow up. You're interested. And you're making an effort. If you make an effort, it will make an effort to be helpful to you, like giving you that kind of a symbol or something, giving you some information that you need when you need it. So it works that way because as you lower your entropy, its entropy is lowered because you're a part of it. You're a part of the system. So it helps you is also helping itself. So it's got incentive to do that. It's not just it's a nice thing and it's trying to help people because it's just nice. No, it's trying to help people because that helps everyone, including the system itself. So there's incentive for the system to be helpful to individuals.
Oh yeah.
So
It's a lot of
you end up
love.
with a
Love.
hair.
Yeah. Yeah. And it helps. And I'm grateful for that. Been since my teenage years, my whole life. Yeah, amazing. Well, I'm gonna jump back a little bit to remote viewing and the symbols. We're talking about symbols now, so I think it's a good time asking this question. I'm wondering what you think about programming the mind with symbols and programming the mind uh, before the viewing, kind of like teaching the mind something, like deciding the symbols intellectually before, like this shape means a man-made structure, or if I see this, it means water, and like you cement that for yourself, and then you start remote viewing. What do you think about that versus just letting your mind make its own symbols naturally, in a way?
Well, what you're doing is you're creating a language, your own language, that you and the larger conscious system can use to communicate to each other. When you say, okay, this means water, it's like you're creating a language. You're saying, all right, larger conscious system, if you want to, put water, if you want to send me water, here's the symbol. I'll interpret that as water. It's like saying, if you want to send me water, it's WATER. Water. You spell it. Well, it's symbols. It's a bunch of symbols. And we just all agree on the symbols. So this is your own private little lexicon, your own private little language with a larger conscious system. And again, if you're a person of interest who's trying to learn and grow, it'll work with you with that. It's your own language that enables it to speak maybe more clearly with you because now you're developing a vocabulary and symbols. So you're creating a special language that will work. And as a person of interest, the system will use that to communicate with you. Now, if the result of that is generally lowering entropy, it will continue. If the result of that isn't, then it will stop. So it kind of depends on what you do with it and how you use it. What you're doing with it. So that we do that with a lot of things. I know a lady who takes a pendulum and holds it up above something, and if it spins this way, it's a yes, and if it spins that way, it's a no, kind of thing. It's kind of a new age toy.
Yeah.
And you hold it up there, and depending on which way it spins is a yes or a no. So then you can ask the system yes or no questions. Should I go to a doctor, or should I just work on this myself? Oh, it spins one way or another, and there's your answer. Well, that's a tool that if you are a person of interest, that the conscious system can use to talk to you. But if you're using it to escape making your own choices, in other words, you can't do anything until you use the pendulum to find out whether that's a good thing to do or not. Should I go to the grocery store or, eat dirt, and you can't make a choice without the pendulum telling you whether it's a right choice or not. You become dependent on it. Then the system is going to give you bogus answers that will send you doing foolish things just to tell you that it's not going to play that game. It's not going to be your free will. It's not going to give you answers to questions that you need to come up with answers yourself. So in that case, it will refuse to cooperate with you. If the situation's different, it may cooperate with you. Again, it depends on the individual, what they're doing with it. Is it being helpful to themselves and others, or is it being harmful to themselves and others? If it's harmful, like you're giving up your free will to your pendulum, then that's not good. You have to make your own choices, or you can't learn. So then it won't cooperate, or it'll do just the opposite. It will give you wrong answers just to annoy you so that you'll stop using it. So you can do that, make up language, your own special little language with the LCS, your own private language, and then you can talk in that language. Yeah, it's easier to do that. That's the way a lot of the divination works. Old times, indigenous people, they'd get a bunch of chicken bones, and they'd throw the chicken bones, and depending on how the chicken bones landed, the positions relative to each other and which bones were where, they could tell the future. All right. And of course, science looks at that and says, nonsense. You can't tell the future by throwing chicken bones. That's ridiculous. But if that over years had become a language with the LCS for getting information out of the probable future database, then that was something that could be very accurate. But it was a special language that they had developed over probably millennia for querying the probable future database. And it works, you see. Same with tea leaves. You see these patterns of tea leaves, and if I look at all those tea leaves, it doesn't mean anything to me. I don't know how to read them. I don't know the language. Somebody who's learned about tea leaves and how to stir it and whatever else, and who has an intuitive connection with the larger consciousness system, and who uses the skill to help people, then the system will talk to her in tea leaf language, whatever that is. And it doesn't matter what it is. People just made it up. Oh, two globs together means this, and a string going this clockwise means this. And, they make up these languages, and then they use that to communicate with the larger conscious system. So yes, some people can read tea leaves and be very accurate with it. They can forecast the probable future, and they're good at it. But others aren't good at it. And some skeptic just says, oh, I'm going to prove this is nonsense. Look, I learned all that language, and I asked it, and I get garbage. Well, yes, you'll get garbage because you're not being helpful. And you may have learned the language, but you don't have the intent and the connection and the attitude and the desire to be helpful. So you get garbage.
Yeah.
So that's the way those things. So most of the things that prognosticate are basically getting the information out of the future, probable database, or the probable future database. And if they're good at it, it means they're probably low entropy people trying to be useful. If they're terrible at it, it probably means they're trying to make money on the, and they maybe were getting some right answers, and then they decided to use it for their gain or something, and now they're not very good at it anymore.
But technically, is that what happens? Like, for example, my mentor in remote viewing has done a lot of work besides remote viewing, also with tarot cards, helping people. So she said, you should try it. And I bought the deck and she taught me, and I tried it a bit, and it could be so accurate with the type of cards that was generated, like when you pick the cards. So I wonder
Sure, it's
technically.
exactly the same thing. That's a language. Those cards mean certain things, and the meaning attached to each type of card is the language. So you make up a language, and the system can use that to communicate with you. I Ching is another one. You flip coins, or you do something binary, drop a bunch of stocks, and somehow you end up with hexagrams. And if you see, the key is there's randomness. There always has to be randomness involved. Randomness in the way the chicken bones fall. Randomness in the way the tea leaves end up sitting. Randomness in the way you shuffle the cards and deal the cards out. All these things have that. That's a necessary ingredient, is the randomness. So as long as there's randomness, that means the system can make those cards be whatever it wants. You're laying them out face down. So if the system really wants to talk to you, and that card being a certain thing, it'll make that card that certain thing. It can make those cards be whatever it wants when you turn them over. Once they're face down, they don't actually have, the other face doesn't actually exist. It's not being rendered. And when you turn it over, the system can render whatever face it wants on it, whatever picture it wants on it. So it can communicate to you by the language of the tarot cards, or the tea leaves, or the chicken bones, or any other thing, the I Ching. So you find a hexagram, and sure enough, that was really important. The hexagram is exactly what you needed to know. Gee, that's amazing. Well, almost everything that it might need to say is in the available hexagrams, and the order in which you put them, and you can put several of them together. And anyway, it's a language between you and the larger conscious system. And as long as it's being used to help open your mind, like, gee, this works. I'm doing this and it works. I'm using the I Ching, and I had a big problem, and the hexagram I got told me exactly what I needed to do. It works. How's that possible? Okay, if it's going to help open your mind, then it'll work. If you're there trying to debunk it, it won't work, because you're not being helpful. It won't work at all. You're a high entropy person, and giving you something, or if you're skeptical and you're just open but skeptical, well, let me try it, see if it works. It'll probably work. So if you're negative, it probably won't work. So it kind of depends on you. If you're a seeker, if you're trying, do you have a connection, to the LCS? All those kinds of things make a difference. Is this going to help you? So the customer comes in to the lady with the chicken bones, or the tarot cards, or the tea leaves, or whatever, and says, I want to find out if my husband's cheating on me, or something like that. Well, that's probably going to be high entropy, right? It's probably not going to make love and peace. It's probably going to do something else. So it may tell them, of course not. Or it may just not work. Or the person doing it says, well, it doesn't seem to be making a real strong message one way or the other, because it's not a helpful thing to do. So it's a language. So yes, if people want to make up symbols, you could go sit down, make up your own set of symbols and everything they mean, and then, pictographs, right? And then deal with those in your connection with the system, with your remote viewing, and it'll work. in as much as it's helpful and low entropy and you're learning something, then fine. The system will work with you.
Yeah, one psychic said that it's more technically about the consciousness interpreting the cards more than the cards that are coming.
That's correct too. So the interpreter, same thing with the people doing the horoscopes. If the interpreter makes a connection to the future probable database, in this case, if they're doing prognostics, and a connection with the person who's come in, their client, then they can download information relative to that client's needs. Yes. They don't know they're doing that. They don't know that there's a database. They don't know they're connecting to it. They don't have to. All they have to do is be in that state of mind where they're open and have that intention, and that intention will automatically get the data and provide it to them. But they need some structure to base it on. So they're looking at these tea leaves, and the tea leaves will maybe show them something. But you're right, it's not in the tea leaf. For those that are really good at it, it's the tea leaf gives them, I don't know, something to look at. It gives them maybe some initial information, but mostly it's the connection they have with the database, and that's where they're getting there. So whether they're looking in crystal balls, tea leaves, chicken bones, whatever, it doesn't really make any difference. They all work the same way. They start with a lot of randomness, a random process of some sort. And then that random process can be manipulated to be helpful to people who are growing up. It's that simple. And yes, if you're a fortune teller and you do that in a sense that you help people. I have a friend who is a medium. She talks to dead people. And what she does is she helps people who have some kind of issue with somebody that died and they didn't get closure, or there's some kind of problem, or there's something they want to tell them, or that kind of thing. Then she makes that connection for them. So she's doing a service. It's helpful. Helps these people. They get past their hang up with this particular issue. They make their closure. They apologize, or they do whatever, whether it's guilt or whether it's something else, it helps them. So she makes the connection, and it works. It works because she's helping people with it. So, yeah, all those things work like that. We're in a system. It's a virtual reality. What we actually see and feel and smell and taste is easily manipulatable by the larger conscious system. It's just data in a data stream. So our reality could be anything it would like to show us. And information, we're telling fortunes and we look at our horoscope or whatever, we can then start to use the tea leaves or the horoscope to justify what it is we want to say. So it needs to have an ability to help us justify what it is we're doing. Because if you told somebody, oh, you're just connecting to a database and getting a download from the larger conscious system, they wouldn't be able to deal with that. That's too abstract. Look at a bunch of tea leaves. Oh, my grandmother taught me how to do that, and I've been practicing, and I'm actually pretty good at it now. You see, that's different. Or tarot cards, Yeah, I've been working these for some time. Yeah, it's what comes out of it that's important. So that's how that stuff works.
Yeah. And so I have a last question, and it's about remote viewing and psychic stuff in real life, and how a community could help people and be a complement in perhaps, I don't know, in a utopia, hospitals and stuff like that, diagnosis, finding solutions to health problems, remote viewing from the database to see diseases or finding missing people, and I'm wondering, like, if there's room for this. I know that it happens in the shadows in kind of way when someone in a power position knows that this stuff works, they contact someone to get some help. And we also know from history that states can use it to spy on each other. So my question is about how do you think that the future can look like with this stuff? Do you think we're towards better place, perhaps in the future, where the rule set will be more open for this stuff to be used more? Because if we use it to for voodoo or spy on each other, it's not good and ineffective for our purpose here. But if it's for the greater good, then it's good, of course. So I'm just wondering your thoughts about this.
Well, remote viewing started just as remote viewing, that you could view some other place remotely, someplace that you weren't. And that was it. So remote viewing was just having eyeballs that were looking at some other place. And then remote viewers discovered they could remote view in the past, in the future, on the dark side of the moon, what was going on at Alpha Centauri. They could remote view other things. And that's because remote viewing isn't really moving your eyeballs places for you to see. It's just collecting data out of a database. Now, you could, if you recall reading Robert Monroe's books, he could go out of body and see what was going on in other places. He could get out of body, travel over to his friend's house and see what they were doing and what was there, and then call them up and see if it was true, and it was true. Okay, so in a way he was remote viewing, but he wasn't remote viewing, he was going out of body. Okay, and you can see the same thing with people who are wake up in their dreams and get lucid dreaming. Oh, they actually are remote viewing too. They're seeing things and getting information. So remote viewing is not just remote viewing. It's not a whole lot different than out of body or any of the other, reading tea leaves, doing whatever. What it's doing is your mind is connecting with a database, and you're getting information that's valuable to you. Reality is information. So people who take kind of the small view of remote viewing, oh, we're just getting information, that's all it is. It's really more than that. You can remote view your dead relatives if you want. Well, what does that mean? Well, how are you actually remote viewing a dead relative? Well, you're acting like a medium. You're acting like somebody goes out of body and talks to dead relatives. You see how all this stuff kind of looks connected? Remote viewing is just kind of a process of connecting with the larger consciousness system. And it's not really limited to looking at things. You can do other things. You can use your remote viewing to get data, let's say, on somebody's health. Okay. But just getting data, while you're getting that data on somebody's health, you could heal them. Healing isn't a difficult thing to do. It's just intent, just like remote viewing is intent. Remote viewing is an intent to get data. Healing is an intent that somebody who's ill gets well. It's just intention. Conscious intention is the dynamic. That's what makes things change. That's what brings you information. That's what heals. So I would kind of offer to your audience that they need to think of it in a little bigger terms other than just remote viewing. First of all, remote viewing was like you moved your eyeballs someplace. Well, that's a small view of remote viewing. And then it was, well, we're not limited to just things here on the earth. We could go other places. Oh, we're not limited in time. We could go to the times. We can go future and past. Oh, you're not limited at all. There are no limitations. You're using your intent to get information, and you can use your intent to modify the future, the probabilities, future probability. That's how you heal. You make the future probability more likely that the person will get well than that they'll get worse. Because both of those are probable or possible. Both of those are possible. They could get worse. They could get better. There's a lot of uncertainty in there. That's our old friend uncertainty again. Because there's uncertainty, you can modify those probabilities. If there's no uncertainty, you couldn't change the probabilities at all. But as long as there's uncertainties, you can. So how do you use it to make the world a better place? There's 1,000 ways you can use it to make the world a better place. And it's not just moving your eyeballs around from one place to another. You can use it to be more aware of people, to be more aware of yourself, be more aware of your fear and how your fear is making your choices, how your fear is making you upset, how your fear is making you argue, how your fear is making you angry. And then get rid of the fear. Now you're actually contributing to the world in a very significant way. Even if all you do is just grow yourself up even a step, that's a great contribution to the world. So that's what I would encourage them to do, to not just be restricted to guessing what the object is. Now, that's a great way to learn because you get immediate feedback. So with that immediate feedback, you can learn much faster. So remote viewing is probably the best way to develop your skills at interacting with the larger consciousness system. This is a good way because feedback comes quickly. On the other hand, it can limit you to just doing things that are remote viewing sort of things. Your mind has a much bigger scope than just remote viewing. You can make lots of different connections to people. You can communicate. You can understand others. You can understand yourself much better if you see bigger pictures. So I'd say live in the bigger picture. Use your remote viewing as a tool to be helpful and useful to other people, whatever that means. Use your ability to empathize with a person and understand them at a deep level. Use your bigger picture sense to realize that people have to grow up on their own. You can't talk them into it. You can't force them. You can't nudge them. You can't push them. They will have to grow, come to the conclusion that they need to change who they are on their own. And the best thing you can do is give them a safe environment in which they can change themselves. If you're constantly trying to make them change in a way that you know is good for them, of course, that's the way we are. We say, oh, well, I know what's better, how you should be and what you should think and how you should act, and I will manipulate you for your own good. Well, that's not helpful. They can't learn from that, even if they make better choices, actually, because of that. It doesn't help them learn anything. So you have to let them grow up on their own and stop trying to manipulate for their own good what they're thinking or feeling or how they're looking at a problem. They're just different than you, so they see things differently. And they may be full of misinformation or ignorance, but they have to learn. They have to find that out. And generally, telling people how they're wrong isn't helpful. It doesn't help them learn or grow at all. Oh, you've just got the wrong idea. You should think like this. All you do is make those people angry. You make them feel like they are not good enough. They're not thinking right. They're ignorant. They're this and that. It's a negative to them. and they recoil from that negative and distance themselves from you and put extra energy in whatever their false idea was. It makes it worse, not better. So these are some big picture things that the remote viewing will lead you to. And it's important because all the paranormal things are all done over on the intuitive side. They help you learn on that intuitive side. They help you grow. They help you master that intuitive side. But when you master the intuitive side, you need to first master yourself and your own fear. And then the things you do will be good things, and you'll get support, and the system will work with you. So look at it from that bigger picture. Don't be stuck in remote viewing. See it that, yes, you can help people. You can see problems. But, let's say you look at somebody and you say, oh, look, they have a terrible health problem. I can fix that. Well, maybe you shouldn't fix it. Maybe they need that problem. Maybe that problem is on their path to growing up, even if that problem kills them. You see, they may need that problem. That problem may be a result of anger they've had for the past 30 years, anger with everybody, including themselves. And that causes them to get cancer or something because of all that negativity. Well, that is the proper end for them. Then next lifetime, they'll learn from that. If you just take that away, then lesson lost. It's all about lessons. So now you have to not just go change things, but be very careful what you change. And then you'll learn that everything is pretty much just the way it ought to be. You don't have to change anything. But you can be helpful still. But you don't have to change anything. So kind of the last question is grow up, get rid of your fear, see the bigger picture. Remote viewing is an awesome thing, and it's great to do. It's a good tool to learn, but you have to realize that the learning has to do with you getting rid of your fear. And remote viewing helps you see bigger pictures. And as you see a bigger picture, reality isn't just a simple little material place. It's got all kinds of other complications to it. And when you get to that point that you see bigger pictures, then yourself becomes smaller and you realize that you're just a small little speck in this big picture. And that will help you with some humility, that you don't have to tell everybody how they should best live their life because you know better than they do. So all this is part of the growing up process, and all the paranormal things can be good for your growth, but doing them just by themselves is not important. So that's the basic message. It's not that you become a wizard and you can do all sorts of paranormal things. You can read people's minds. You know what they're thinking. You know how they're feeling. You know what to do to help them. You can heal what makes them ill. You can do all those things. And a person can learn to do all those things. But if it's the power and the ego in being a wizard that attracts you, then you're actually going to harm yourself, not help yourself. And eventually what you'll find is you won't be able to do any of it. It'll all disappear because you're not using it and growing from it. So it becomes inaccessible to you. So the paranormal, think of it as a tool for learning and growing up and seeing bigger pictures, not as a way that you can change things or fix things. Mostly things don't need to be changed or fixed. They are that way for a reason. And I guess that's the last message. Take the bigger picture. Don't get too wrapped up in your ability to do, paranormal things and how special you are because you can do that. That's going down the wrong path. Look at your ability. How can I use this to be helpful? How can I use this? And being helpful doesn't mean you have to use it to save the world. Maybe you just use it to help crack open other people's minds, to see in bigger pictures. You may be using it just to help somebody feel better. You can use your mind to not only communicate things to people and learn about what's in their minds, but you can use it just to make people feel better. If somebody's down or grouchy, you can just send them a lot of positive energy, a lot of positive attitude and positive feeling, and give them a non-physical hug and some love. And you're amazing how you can turn somebody into being depressed to being happy. That's a good gift. And it's better
Yeah.
if it's anonymous. Don't get your ego, by telling people, "Oh, I fixed you." That's not helpful.
Mm.
You just do that anonymously. So there's lots of things you can do and different skills. And remote viewing isn't just moving your eyeballs around to some strange place. It's just getting data out of a database. And that database has to be there because it's the database that the system uses to help it render the reality. It needs that database to render the reality. So that's why it creates it. That's why it keeps it. But it's also a place we can play. You can go into the past database and remote view it, or, however you want to say, whether you just visit the past, go into a past life, or anything else. You just want to go back and look at some historical moment, or you want to go into the past and do what if analysis. What if I had done this instead of that? What difference would it make? 5 years later, 10 years later, 20 years later, you can get all that kind of information. And that'll help you make better decisions. So don't just get stuck in remote viewing. It's nice. You can learn a lot, and it's great because of its immediate feedback. Good tool, but there's a much bigger world out there. There's a much bigger reality out there of which you ought to become an active part and be helpful to others. So that's kind of the last thing I guess I'd like to say.
Very
Use
beautiful.
it for the right reasons, to do the right things, help other people grow up, and you'll see that it'll get easier and easier and easier.
Yeah, what a beautiful, powerful thing to be able to contribute to other people, helping, healing, and just giving without any expectations to get something back. Thank you so much, Tom, for your time and answering this question. It's been very educational. Yeah, thank you for all your work and your theory of everything and all the material you put out on YouTube and all the work you do.
Yeah, since I mentioned all the other kind of paranormal things, and if other people want to learn those skills and don't know how, you
Mm.
can send them over to my website and look at that. Exploring the larger conscious system and everything paranormal is a thing that will help them learn how to mind-to-mind communications and healing and other sorts of things if they want to branch out to things other than remote viewing. But they're all part of the same thing. Whether you go out of body and get that information, or whether you get it remote viewing, or whether you get it through a lucid dream, it's all the same thing. You're getting data out of a database. You're getting a data stream that's showing you things, whether you get it visually or in sound or in feeling. It doesn't matter. You can interpret that data whatever way suits you best. It's just practice. The more you practice, the more you grow up, the easier it gets. And pretty soon, all that stuff just becomes a part of your life. You don't even think about it. It just happens. You meet people and you know exactly what their problem is and why they're unhappy and where it came from and what you can do about it. All of that just appears to you instantly without you even having to think about it. So that's kind of the place to go. And remote viewing is just a good start. It's a good place to get started. So all of you remote viewers out there, keep working at it. It may seem frustrating sometimes, but that's because you're trying too hard. If you stop trying, you'll be more successful. The trying actually gets in the way of your success. So yeah, there's skills and there's techniques, and try this technique and that technique and do all these things, but technique isn't really what does it? What really makes it work for you is letting go of the fear. Letting go of the fear is 1,000 times more important than any technique that you might come across. Just be open, let it flow, and don't have your ego attached to it. Don't have performance anxiety. If you get it wrong, that has to be okay as well. If getting it wrong is a problem for you, then you'll get it wrong more often. Because the things you fear are the things you create, because you put so much energy into the fear. It's been fun. I'm glad I could help. I hope your communities learn something useful. And thank you for the opportunity to talk to them.
Thank you. And I will link them to your website and also recommend your binaural beats because they are the best, better than anything I found out there. Very good, especially the new ones. I like them a lot. I think the one you released for 2 years ago, maybe 3 years. No,
Yeah,
I think it's 2 years ago.
Yeah.
They're very good.
Yeah, they're pretty good. Those binaural beats come out of just experience. I gave a lot of these courses, and I'd tweak them a little bit, and I'd change them around and see if they were better or worse, and I'd change them some more. And after doing that, 10 or 15 times, I got them to a point where they seemed to be maximized and work best for most people. But binaural beats, like anything, are very individual. So I have lots of them. And the idea is to try them all, see which ones work best for you. And then 6 months later, try them all again, because the ones that you really hated first time are going to be the ones that you really love 6 months later. You change. As you grow, you change. And as you change, the way you interface with things changes. And that course I was telling you about, the paranormal stuff, that comes with the binaural beats already in it. So they're already part of that package. So anyway, thank you, Armand. It's been fun. I and MBT Events hope you like this video. If you do, then you should consider being a Patreon member, because Patreon members get early access to our special content. You will also be able to get your questions answered by me in special Q&A sessions, and most importantly, your contribution as a patron member will enable us to produce the content that you're looking for. So thank you.